عِرْضَكَ وَمَالَكَ أَعَزُّ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ دِينِكَ. Have you got the text so you can read? Yeah, read
it. Likewise, you must detest sins and those who persist in committing them.
Or didn't we read that part?
Or when you become angry.
Did we read that last week? وَعَلَيْكَ بِكَرَاهَةِ الْمَعَاصِي.
No, we didn't read that.
Oh, sorry, I'll read that, then you can read that. Sorry. وَعَلَيْكَ بِكَرَاهَةِ.
Should put the live video on?
Yeah, why not, if you can work it. وعليك قال المؤلف رحمه الله رضي الله عنه وعنكم نفعنا به وبكم وعليك بكراهة المعاصي وكراهة المصرين عليها وبغضهم في الله وهذا واجب على كل مؤمن.
Likewise, you must detest sins and those who persist in committing them, and abhor them for the sake of God, this being a duty for all Muslims.
Alright, so we've spoken about this before. We've spoken about this in the door of taqwa. When we spoke about taqwa, did we not mention this? Maybe not. Yeah, we spoke about it, that part of taqwa is loving all that's halal and wanting to perform it and hoping that others would do so. And then part of taqwa is staying away from all that's haram, hating haram. And the Imam goes on to talk about something that we didn't speak about, which is another aspect of ma'asi, disobedience to Allah, maybe not haram. It's more I suppose, more general. When we say ma'asi, disobedience to Allah, that has more factors and more parts to it than just what haram does. So when we consider what the Imam is saying, what Imam al-Haddad is saying with regards to this, saying that it's incumbent upon us to hate all sorts of disobedience to Allah and to disassociate ourselves from that disobedience. And he further says, وَكَرَاهَةِ الْمُصِرِّينَ عَلَيْهَا. So the difference between the person that, look, the Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked him, because he was Kalim Allah. He said, what have you done for me, ya Sayyidina Musa? He said, Ya Allah, I fasted for you. He said, fasting is a junnah, it's a protection for you. He said, what have you done for my sake? He said, Ya Allah, I fasted. I've prayed. He said, praying is for you. You pray that you get benefit out of it in this life and the next. And then he said, what have you done for me? And he said, then Musa alayhi salam said, I'm not sure, Ya Allah. Then, this is in Ihya al-Din. Imam Ghazali is Ihya. And then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who did you take as a friend for my sake? And who did you take as an enemy for my sake? So who did you take as someone that you're connected to as a friend with regards to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And who did you take as an enemy first and foremost, our most avowed enemy being the shaitan, with regards to disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So that's the context in which Imam al-Haddad refers to it in. It's not to hate the person as to detest that individual in that sense, but to someone who knows what they're doing is wrong, not someone who doesn't know what they're doing is wrong. They're two different categories. So someone who doesn't know what's going on in the criminal law of the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the criminal law yustatab. So for example, in Australia, if you get caught stealing, that's it. You get depending how old you are and what you stole and how many times you've done it, you either get a good behaviour bond, or if you're young, they might send you to a home. If you're Aboriginal, you've probably got a higher chance of that happening. Whatever, maybe Muslim, maybe it's a bit harder as well. That's the reality. But Islamically speaking, if the person's in a baligh of age, then istatab. They take him and or her, as the case might be, and educate the person. Do you know stealing is wrong? What's going on? If someone's got kleptomania, for example, they have to be treated before they'll be punished. So that's the way that the crime is dealt with in our deen. All types and all sorts of crime, except al-musir. That's what Imam al-Haddad is. What is the word he used in English? Musir.
Those who persist.
Right. So someone, it's even more explicit than that. More explicit than that. Al-musir is someone who is determined to perform evil, and they know it's evil, or disobedience to Allah more correctly. They know it's disobedience to Allah. They don't care, and doesn't matter what they're told, they're still going to do it for whatever reason they've made up their reason. They made up in their heads. And that's an important element that a da'i, a caller to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to remember. Because some people are like that. Some people don't have an intention that you and I can understand. They just have in their heads they want to destroy. They have in their heads they want to do what they want. They have in their heads they don't want to listen to anyone. They have in their heads that no one should control them or influence them. There are people like that in the world. Whether we like them or we don't, whether we accept them or we don't, those people exist. Those people are there. So we have to understand that there are going to be some individuals who persist and who are determined to commit disobedience to Allah and evil in that sense for whatever reason that might be. But we've got to keep that in that not everyone's good, misfortunately, unfortunately. And majority are, inshallah azza wa jal, but there are some, and those individuals that are like that, then we have to hate their actions and unfortunately hate them also. It's a wajib ala kulli mu'minin. Because it's the next level after just hating a person's act, is someone who knows what they're doing. And that's the key. It's not people that don't know. It's people that understand what they're doing. They know it's wrong and they don't care, they still want to continue to do it. So he says, وَإِذَا ظُلُمْتَ أَوْ شُتِمْتَ فَظَهَرَ عَلَيْكَ من الغضب وتغير الوجه ووجدت من كراهة الفعل والفاعل ما لا يكون مثله ولا أعظم منه عند سماع المنكر ومشاهدته فتحقق أنك ضعيف الإيمان وأن عرضك ومالك أعز عليك من دينك.
When you become angry because you were wronged or insulted, and this shows on your face, and you find that your loathing of that deed and the person who did it are more than your loathing of any evil that you see or hear about, then know for certain that your faith is weak, and your honor and wealth are dearer to you than your religion.
Does this sum up our situation? It's particularly what we see about Muslims in the media. We all get upset. That's normal. Someone talks about the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, or someone draws a cartoon about the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, or someone says something about our faith, or someone wants to stop Muslims from doing this, or someone wants to prevent Muslims from wearing hijab in wherever it might be. Yeah, of course. Of course. But what Imam al-Haddad's talking about specifically with regards to this, he's talking about that if you are calling to Allah, if you are calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're enjoining good and you're dissuading evil, and someone says something to you like, who do you think you are? Are you better than me? Or whatever they say. You know, oh, what, are you a saint all of a sudden? Whatever they say. And you feel something in your heart towards what that person said and towards that person as an individual. That's more specifically what he's talking about. Imam al-Haddad. Right? Then, and he says, والفاعل ما لا يكون مثله ولا أعظم منه عند السماع. What's he saying in English then? عند السماع المنكر والمشاهدة.
Find that your loathing of that deed and the person who did it are more than your loathing of any evil that you see or hear about.
Right? So that's where the issue comes in. That forget about what the person is so upset by what's been said to them, and so upset with the person that said that thing or did that thing. And we can't go past the example of the Prophet of Allah ﷺ in that regard, when he was in Mecca, Medina in particular. You know, they threw the entrails when he was making sajda, they threw the entrails of a camel on him when he was in sajda. The entrails, in other words, the intestines and stuff of a camel. How much does a camel weigh? Does anyone know?
Very heavy.
Alright, it's very heavy indeed. We're looking at 500-600 kilos, at least.
Small car.
Right? Yeah, it's like a small car. So imagine what the entrails weigh. We're looking at 50 odd kilos. So someone picked them up and put it on him while he was prostrating. What did he do? Did he say, I'm going to blow you up? I'm going to kill you? I'm going to destroy you? No, he didn't say any of those things. I'm going to make you women slaves. We're going to make you men into prisoners of war. He didn't say any of those things. Alayhi salatu wassalam. Didn't do any of those things. It was actually Fatima that came and defended him in that scenario. When the qaba'il, the different tribes on the Arabian Peninsula used to come to Mecca to make the Hajj, because they used to make the Hajj not to Allah, but to the Lat wal Uzza, the gods that they had, that all the tribes used to come, and the Prophet of Allah would go from tent to tent to tent to tent, from camp to camp to camp, and try and call them to Allah. And Abu Jahl would come behind with a stick and poke his camel until he got bucked off the camel. Camel, how tall is it? The camel is high. It's a couple of meters off the ground. Right? What did he do? Did he put out a vendetta on him? Did he get a fatwa on him that he should be killed? No. Didn't do any of those things, alayhi salatu wassalam. He was patient with Allah because he knew that the shirk that was going on, the association of partners with other than Allah, was greater than the damage that he was suffering personally. And that is actually the criteria, or the criterion more correctly, that one determines whether they're acting for Allah or acting for their own self. Whether one is willing to give up one's, and as the Imam said, honor or money. In other words, honor meaning not honor just in, but I'm somebody. I'm a human being. I have rights. There's United Nations rights. There's laws. I should be treated as I should be treated. Not to say that we don't call for that. Not to say that as Muslims in the land in which we live, where it's democratic and everyone has a right to vote and determine policy and etc., 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 we should be calling for those things. The question is, we shouldn't be calling for those things only when there's an isa'ah, only when there's something negative done towards us as a people. That's just a reaction. We should be acting in the first instance, and we should be active in bringing to fruition those things that we need within the framework of the land in which we live. So that's the question that we need to ask ourselves when something happens to us, when someone makes fun of our hijab, when someone makes fun of the way we dress, when someone makes fun of the fact that we're praying or whatever, or how does that affect us? And what does he say? He says, فَتَحَقَّقْ أَنَّكَ ضَعِيفُ الْإِيمَانِ. So the reality of your situation, or that person's situation, be real. تَحَقَّقْ, know for sure, undoubtedly, know as a fact that that individual is weak in one's faith. That individual that feels that way about being told off or being persecuted or being alienated or ostracized from the group, from the people, from the majority, from whoever it might be. Because he said, وَأَنَّ عِرْضَكَ وَمَالَكَ أَعَزُّ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ دِينِكَ. That means, in the estimation of things, that one's own personal status, that's what honor. My own personal status as whoever I am is, in my own personal estimation, more valuable than the deen. Because these people, the disobedient ones in that sense, have desecrated the sacredness of the deen of Allah. But to me, that's not where the issue is. The issue is they called me whatever, or said about me whatever, or money. That I don't want to say that because I've got a business or I need a job or whatever it might be. Now that may or may not be as applicable to us. So that I'm not going to do something in terms of obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal, and specifically with regards to calling to Allah and joining the good and forbidding the evil or dissuading the evil, because there could be a financial benefit later on for me. So they're the things that we need to test ourselves on. When Imam al-Haddad Jazakallah Khair, when he talks about these things, when he reminds us about these things, then this should be a principle for the way we lead our lives. That when I make a comment on Facebook about Islam and I get all these negative, how do I feel? What's my reaction? When whatever it is that I'm doing, community work, talking to my relatives, talking to my friends, dressing in a particular way, going to a particular gate, whatever it is that I do, if it is that I feel that I'm injured and I'm oppressed and I fought revenge on that person and all these different things that might go through a person's mind, that means that individual prefers themselves and their money over the deen of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And unfortunately, no matter what that person does, until they change their intention, until they change their actions, until they change their state of mind and their disposition, unfortunately they'll never be in the way of Allah, no matter what they do, because they're only following their desires.
In regards to that, just say someone's constantly teasing you or something, for example, isn't it just a natural reaction to feel that way?
It is a natural reaction. Now the reason is, why are they giving you a hard time? So if it's because you're calling to Allah, then you don't have a right. what Imam saying, what Imam Haddad saying is then the call to Allah should overcome that emotion. And the Prophet of Allah he said, none of you truly believe that none of you truly believe until your own desires, your own feelings, basically, are subject to that which I have brought. So we're talking about the mu'mineen. We're not talking about the Muslimin. Muslimin is a different level. We're talking about the level of those that are pious. Those that make enjoining good and dissuading evil a priority in their lives. These people, the people that emulate the prophets in the way the prophets acted and the way the prophets thought and what the prophets did. So it's these people that the references to. And if someone's just making fun of you for no reason, that's a different scenario. And of course it's normal to be hurt. The question is, what is one going to prioritize? The hurt that one feels? The Prophet of Allah, he cried when his son died. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, what's going on? He said, the eye tears and the heart feels hazan, not depression, but sadness, yeah, but it's specific to death, so it's grief, thank you. So the heart grieves. And the eye tears, it waters, it's the normal state of a human being. So we're not saying don't have the normal state of the human being. The question is the priority of which one should I be more upset about? The fact that someone said something bad to me, or the fact that these people are in disobedience of Allah Azza wa Jal. So that's the determining factor in my life as to whether the deen is more valuable or my own self is more valuable. And unfortunately, we live in the time of self. We live in the time of I'm so important. And one of the reasons why we have so much conflict in the world, firstly, is because there's injustice. That's the first main reason, that a few take advantage of the majority. And the second reason is that everyone's out there seeking their rights. No one's seeking to fulfill their obligations, or not no one, but the majority, or what you could say, the silent minority, whatever. I mean, the loud minority, or whatever you want to call them. You don't hear people saying, well, we're going to do a protest because we want to fulfill people's obligations. Have you ever heard of it? If you hear of it, go along. It'll probably be a good rally. You know, never hear someone coming on TV and saying we should fulfill the rights of our neighbours. Our neighbours have rights upon us. If we want to make a good community, what we have to do is, whatever, clean our streets and give $50 a week or whatever a month in charity. You don't hear that. You hear that the reason why our country is so bad is because of those people, and those people, and those people, and those people, and we're the only good ones. So that's a cry of discourse, of disunity. Excuse me. That's a cry of disunity, or a discourse of disunity, if you like. That's what splits people up. That's what destroys communities. That's what destroys nations. That's what destroys families. That everyone's seeking, and in a husband and a wife scenario, when we studied nikah, marriage in Islamic law, we went through the whole thing, and then at the end the Shaykh told us, he goes, if a husband and wife treat each other with just seeking their rights, for 100% they'll get divorced. Because it's more than that. Karam al-akhlaq, وَلَا تَنْسُوا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, don't forget the favours, the good things you've done for each other that are between yourselves. So it has to be higher than that. It has to be greater than that. It has to be that a person prioritizes other over themselves. And that's part of لَا يُؤْمِنُ أَحَدُكُمْ حَتَّى يُحِبُّ لِأَخِيهِ أو يُحِبَّ لِأَخِيهِ مَا يُحِبَّ لِنَفْسِهِ. That none of you truly believes until you love for your brother or sister that which you love for yourself. And that is truly what binds people together. That's what makes a community. That's what makes a society. That's what makes a nation. And really that's what makes the human race. And when that's split and rent asunder, then that's when we start to see what we see in the world in which we live in today. Not all of it's like that, but it's there clear as day. Any questions about any of that? It says, وَإِذَا عَلِمْتَ وَتَحَقَّقْتَ أَنَّكَ إِذَا أُمِرْتَ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ نَهَيْتَ عَنْ مُنْكَرٍ لَا يَسْتَمِعُ لك ولا يقبل منك أو علمت أنه يحصل عليك بسببه ضرر ظاهر في نفسك أو مالك جاز لك السكوت وصار الأمر والنهي بعد أن كان واجبا من الفضائل العظيمة الدال من فاعله على محبة الله وإثاره على من سواه. وأما إذا علمت أن المنكر يزيد بسبب النهي أو يعتدي الضرر إلى غيرك من المسلمين فالسكوت حينئذ أولى وربما وجب.
You are permitted to remain silent if you know with certainty that if you enjoy good and or forbid evil, your words will neither be listened to nor accepted, or they will ensure obvious harm either to yourself or your property. This is when enjoining and forbidding change from being an obligation into being a tremendous virtue, which indicates that the one that does them loves God and prefers Him to all else. And if you come to know that an evil will increase in forbidden, or that the harm will involve other Muslims in addition to yourself, then silence is better and in some cases obligatory.
Alright, so we've spoken about this before as well. We've mentioned that to call to Allah Azza wa Jal has the same rulings, the ahkam, that other deeds do in the deen. So there's, sometimes it's farad to fast. When's it farad to fast? And sometimes haram to fast. When's it haram to fast? Eid, right? Sometimes it's sunnah to fast. When's it sunnah to fast? Right? Well, Mondays, Thursdays. Sometimes it's makruh to fast. When's it makruh to fast?
Last 2 weeks.
Friday by itself. Alright?
And the last 2 weeks of Shawwal.
Right, the last 2 weeks of Shawwal.
Sorry, Shaban.
Shaban, right? So all the different rulings, and mubah, sometimes mubah to fast. When? Anytime. Right, mubah, except for those muharram times. Okay, so everything in terms of actions, obedience to Allah, they're the basic 5 rulings. They're the basic 5 rulings. Okay? So, same with Amr Ma'ruf wa Nahy al Munkar. It has those basic 5 rulings. And that's what Imam Haddad's referring to. He's only referring to 2 of them, but that's really what he means. So, that's for us to, inshallah, explain that. So, when is it haram to call to Allah or to dissuade, encourage good or dissuade evil? When is it haram?
When you know you won't be listened to or it won't be accepted.
Okay? When you know that people will reject, you know that if you go somewhere, like if you go to one of those, really right-wing, nut job, extremist, fundamentalist, radical, white supremacist, Muslim-hating, Islamophobic groups. You go to these guys, they're just as extreme as these crazy, psychotic, bloodthirsty, terrorist people that want to kill. There's no real difference between the two except the actual ideology, but their actions and their reactions are the same. Well, what's the difference between it? They're the ones we should be most worried about, not the mainstream people. The mainstream, they're living their lives. These guys are ideologues. That's it. What's in their head they're going to do. So you go there, what's going to happen to you? Try and tell them about Islam. When you go there in hijab, you go there wearing sunnah, what's going to happen to you? Well, you get attacked. More than likely you'll get attacked. If not verbally, if not physically, then almost certainly verbally. Do you think that you'll make any difference? No. So then it's haram in that situation. Especially if you know you're going to be physically harmed. Or that, let's say for example, you're whatever army person and you've got guns and all legal stuff, and you see the neighbours acting funny. Sorry, you're visiting your friend and that friend's neighbour's acting funny, and you go there to tell them something. But you know that when you go, the neighbour is going to come and harm your friend. You know that's going to be a fact. Right? Then in that case, when someone else, a Muslim, in the first instance, but when someone else is going to be harmed by your enjoining good and dissuading evil, then it's also haram. Because it's one of the most fundamental things that the deen protects is life. And life doesn't mean life and death, it means limbs as well. And people being injured and broken noses and broken faces and bones and all those other things. So it's either you're going to be harmed and you know that's going to be the fact, or or someone else is going to be harmed. In the first instance, a Muslim, second instance, anyone else. Okay? So then we wouldn't call to good nor would you dissuade evil. Make dua, and what do? If you're there in that situation, leave.
Yeah.
Right? You go. That's it. Alright? The second scenario, when is it sunnah? To call to good and dissuade evil? All the time. But not if you know that the first occasion is going to happen. All the other times, that's the sunnah of the rusul. Sunnah of the messengers is to do that. And so, that's the sunnah of their job of the anbiya, but it's wajib upon the messengers to do that. It's an obligation upon the messengers to enjoin good and forbid evil. 100%, no doubt about it. So for example, you might hear that some people, they say that, the sibha, the masbah, it's haram. Some people, they say that. Masbah, it's haram. And what's the dalil? The dalil is a hadith where there was an old lady, and she had the Noah or stones, she had the inside of the date, the seed of the date, or she had stones, she was taking them out of a bag and she was saying subhanallah, making dhikr. Then the Prophet of Allah, he saw her, and he says, would you like me to tell you something better than that? And she said, yes. He said, say subhanallah adma khalaqa fi sama, subhanallah adma khalaqa fi al-ard, subhanallah adma bayna dhalik, subhanallah adma huwa khaliq. Then alhamdulillah the same, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah the same, Allahu Akbar the same. So these people that don't have knowledge, because unfortunately there are some Islamic traditions or Islamic traditions, so-called Islamic traditions, that don't rely on scholarship. They rely on, I read it, I make up my own mind, and that's all I care about. So what did they say? This is the dalil that it's haram to have a misbah because this lady had or a sibha, had the stones. But that's completely wrong. It's completely wrong, because if it was haram, the Prophet of Allah being a messenger, and it being an obligation upon him to do what? Dissuade evil, he would have told her, listen, stop doing that. But did he tell her to stop? What did he say to her?
Give it another.
So I'll tell you something better, which is that's the job of the anbiya. So that's why the whole issue about that is a non-issue. Okay? So it's the obligation upon the messengers, if they see any munkar, any haram, anything of that nature, they must obligatorily tell the people. Otherwise, what will happen?
The wrong stuff will increase.
Right? People will think it's okay. They say, well, the messenger was there, he didn't say anything. People say that about the sheikhs these days. The sheikh was there, he didn't say, well, the sheikh's not a nabi. He's not an afa, not a rasul. Maybe he's got his own issues or whatever. Or the hajj, now they don't even worry about the sheikh. Hajj, she went to hajj 5 times. You say, what, bro? He's going to make fatwa now all of a sudden. He went to hajj, he goes to hajj every year. So what does that qualify him for? How does that make him any different to any other Muslim? If he's not, or she is not learned, doesn't matter what they do. And they say, لا دلالة بأفعال العوام, that there is no evidence of what the deen is by the actions of the regular people. It's the actions of, firstly, the rusul, and then secondly, the scholars. The scholars do have that responsibility. Maybe not in our time as much, but they're supposed to carry that responsibility. Okay? So it'll be sunnah in that regard. Mubah, it's actually sunnah if you have the belief that your presence, that your word will change the people. That's the actual hukm of the sunnah. If you have the belief, ghalabati dhann they call it. If you kind of think that your words and your presence will make a difference. So that means that you can go to places that other people can't go. Or the da'i, the one calling to Allah, can go to places. If you believe that your Muslim friends, if you show up, they're going to be... And look, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. I remember some people that I knew, back in the day, they weren't very good people. I know they weren't good. I know what they're like. And they tell me they don't care. Then one time one of the sheikh came to visit us, and all of a sudden their attitudes changed. Oh, yeah, sheikh, And they never prayed. The sheikh said, well, let's pray. Yeah, let's go. The guy's making adhan. This guy's running off to make wudu. This guy's getting the prayer mats. This guy's getting all of a sudden. So it does make a difference. People do change depending on who's there and what their circumstance is. So you've got to know that. You've got to know. All of a sudden when there's a good person around, everyone starts to act good. And vice versa. When there's a person who's bad around, everyone starts to tell the story of that time when they ran a red light, or they stole apple, toffee apple, I don't know if you have those anymore, whatever it is from the shop, from the milk bar, or they don't have milk bars anymore. Stole the Snickers from the 7-Eleven, whatever it is, okay? Everyone starts to tell their bad boys, so to speak, bad girl, bad boy, bad person stories because of bad, that's the nature. Have someone who's athletic, people start talking about athletics and sport. Have someone who's wealthy, all of a sudden people start talking about their investments in China and how they were on the NASDAQ and bought shares and made money. That's the nature. You need to pay attention to these things. Because human nature, to pay attention to and understand the deen is one aspect, but to understand and pay attention to human nature is the other. The da'i, the caller to Allah, has to marry those two things together. Id'u ila sabili rabbika, that's the ilm, bil hikmah, that's the people. That's the knowledge. The call to the way of your Lord with wisdom. That's how are you going to deal with the people? And it's changed. It's different. Different in different places. Some people, you've got to be direct. Bro, what are you doing? You've got to pray, man. What's going on? That's how it is in some places. Other places, it's a long and slow meander of talking about flowers and trees and the creation and whatever, to finally say that something that maybe we should connect. Everyone's different. And you've got to work that out as a caller. No good to say, oh, I'm educated, I know the deen. So what? If you can't apply it, it doesn't mean anything. So the sunniyah, the nadab they say, the sunnah aspect of it is that you assume, you feel like, you believe that your influence will change things. Whether it's positive, get rid of the negative, or to add the positive. When it's jaiz, permissible, it's okay to do it either way, is when you're not sure either way, maybe it will, maybe it won't, then it's mubah, then it's mubah to do it, it's permissible to do it, same thing. And then makruh, with the opposite of mandub, of sunnah, when you think that what you're going to do is not going to make a difference, then it's makruh to do it. You still can. And then in the last scenario, as we already explained, if you're going to be hurt, your property is going to be hurt, or someone else is going to be hurt, then it's haram. Haram to do it. So that's what the Imam's talking about. He's saying that what he says is rubbama wajab. So he's not even going to that extent, Imam Haddad. He's saying that where there's a difficulty and this is what the fuqaha say. So there's a difference between the sciences. So the difference between the sciences, right? The fuqaha, Imam al-Haddad isn't talking about the fiqh so much of the situation. He's talking about the spiritual state. He's talking about how the believer should be when it comes to how important. And then some of the ulama said that we thought that al-amr ma'ruf, enjoining good and forbidding, dissuading evil, was going to become a rukn like the other 5 arkan. That's how important it is. So that's the flavor in which Imam Haddad has approached this chapter, this paragraph. He says that even if you are going to get hurt, even if your property is going to get damaged, there is, he said, فضائل عظيمة الدالة على فاعله الدالة من فاعله على محبة الله وإثاره على من سواه. So he said, even when the person's life is in danger, even when the person's property is in danger, even when the person's family is in danger, to say good, to enjoin good and to forbid evil should be done. And he says, even in that situation, rubbama, he said, maybe it's wajib not to do it. So that's the different states, right? And we know from our Mashaykh, from Habib Kadhim, that he was given one of the masajid in Mukalla, and it was these militant Muslims that were there. They didn't like him. He had nothing to do with him. He says give dawah, give talks, and so one day they came, they turned off the lights in the masjid, and they beat him, and they broke his arm, broke his collarbone, put cuts on his face. Just why? Because he's calling to Allah for no other reason. And then he came to the Jalsa al-Ithnain. Habib Umar was giving the talk, and he said, Balagha martaba, that he reached a stage in da'wah that I never reached, because his life was threatened, and they had guns, they had AK-47, they were going to kill him. But they didn't. So that's up to you. That's your choice to make. That's your choice to make in the situation. what your life's worth and what you live for. And the people really, and honestly, who are celebrated in our time and throughout time are the people who died for what they lived for. The people who died for what they believed in. And even people as athletes and, people, who was it? This rock climbing guy, they used to call him the Spider. He used to climb up buildings, that's how awesome a climber he was, French guy. Died, actually that guy died in a car accident, so that's a bad example. But people who die doing what they love doing, no matter how dangerous, the guy that used to, I don't know what sport it is, maybe you can tell me, he used to jump off the mountain with like a suit, one of those flying squirrels. I don't know what that sport is. You guys know what I mean?
Gliding?
Yeah, but it's not a big hang glider,
it's
it's just a suit. I don't know how these guys do it. Does anyone know what it's called? Do you know what I mean though?
It's about parasailing.
No, not that.
The
It's just a suit with like wings, like a sugar glider.
You know, yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Anyway, the bloke, he was one of the pioneers, and what happened? He had a crash of this. You're going 200 kilometers an hour with no protection, and he died. And then everyone was celebrating his life, because he died, and the people that climb up Everest and die there. So, if those people's lives are celebrated for doing what, for following their adrenaline needs, I suppose, what about those people whose lives are celebrated for them sacrificing their life for what they believe in a spiritual sense? What's their status? Like Sayyid al-Shuhada, Sayyidina Asadullah, Sayyidina wa Rasulullah, Sayyidina Hamza. No one forgets Sayyidina Hamza. Right? So those people that do something, that give their lives, like the people that got squashed in the tanks when this coup happened in Turkey and these things, they're remembered. The people that give their lives, the army officer in the United States, the Muslim guy, that he gave up his life to save other people's lives. And there was another guy, it might have been in France or something, I can't remember what it was. He grabbed the suicide bomber and he held him, and then when he blew up, less people died. These people are remembered. There's that other lady as well that went to Israel and stood in front of the tanks, and it's not the tanks, the bulldozers, when they were bulldozing the Palestinian villages. She's not a Muslim, she's Rachel Corey or so, I can't remember what her last name is, but these people are lauded. They're remembered. Every year they have her anniversary. That this is what she did. She was from America, she went there, and she was killed because of what she believed in. So the question is, that's the question everyone has to ask themselves. And the Sahabi, they had that issue. 2 Sahabis went from Mecca to Medina. They were caught on the way. They were told to renounce their faith. One of them was wealthy. One of them said, no, I don't renounce it. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah ashhadu Muhammad Rasul. They killed him. The other one was wealthy. He says, look, just let me go. I'll give you all my wealth. Take my wealth. And they said, what about renouncing faith? He says, khalas, I'll renounce my faith. No, he didn't really, but he was saying it so he'd get away. He explained the story to the Prophet of Allah in Medina, and he said, no, what you did is fine. But he didn't go into the situation. He said that the fact that you renounced verbally, but in your heart you still believe, so you could save your life, that's okay. Then the Sahabi said to the Prophet of Allah, but the other Sahabi, the deal he made was better than the deal I made. Because he made a deal to give up his property to live. The other one, he gave his life for what he believed in. And that's what determines who we are. What we believe determines who we are. So that's the question that we have to ask ourselves, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we'll stop there, bi'idhnillah. Any questions about any of those things? About anything else? No.
You know how we learned previously, like the after we should do after Dhuhr on Friday, like saying the 7, like the 3 quarters and that 7 times.
Yep.
And
Fatiha as well.
Yes, 7 times, and then the dhikr as well. Do we need to like double up, like do that and then do our normal afkar as well? That will.
Yes, if you have the time, yeah, of course.
Okay.
So if you have your on Friday, things should be extra. Like if you can dedicate your more time to worship on Friday than any other time, it's prescribed. It's something that we should be doing because it's Eid for us. It's a special day. If you can't,